Hi, this is my presentation on hidden disabilities, and my name is Amy Crouch. My title is Hidden Doesn't Mean Absent, Understanding Sensory Overload, Identity, and Inclusion. Kind of a first thing just to start before I get into the main topic of hidden disabilities. I think there is just an overall importance of understanding what we mean when we say disability, that it's not just an impairment. We have to look at the environments, attitudes, and systems that are surrounding the people and that often tend to fail them. Today, I'm going to explore those hidden disabilities through the lens of sensory overload, overwhelming, and how those environments, like I just mentioned, and not the disability, often create those barriers. This project is connecting to the ideas a lot from Module 2 and 3 that we talked about this term with identity development and how invisible disabilities are often misunderstood. My goal is absolutely awareness, but also empathy. So here we go. Maybe one of the first things to talk about is what is a hidden disability. We often don't see it. It can affect learning, communication, your participation. I thought this image was great because if you're just glancing by a picture and you look at these students, if they were all lined up against the wall, you wouldn't know anything was wrong with them until maybe they expressed what their disabilities were. Maybe they didn't. And you can see here just some examples. They've got migraines, Crohn's disease, epilepsy. They have a hearing impairment, or again, the one that I'm focusing on is kind of sensory disorders. Hidden disabilities are often misunderstood because they're not immediately visible, which would make sense. Someone can appear fine while struggling internally with some kind of, in this case, sensory overload, communication, or some other kind of executive function. When we talk about the social construct of disability, it's important to remember that, again, it's that environment that's creating the barrier, not necessarily the person. And I'm going to share kind of an experience that one of my own students had with this very issue that kind of drove me or guided my decision to cover this for the final project. So one of the things that we learned about in our lecture is the role of identity and how, again, it is shaped by experience, environment, and how society responds to the difference. We learned that disability, it isn't just a biological thing. It's shaped socially. When others don't recognize or accommodate those invisible needs, oftentimes the person feels shame. They may withdraw and they may mask their disabilities rather than having a sense of pride and a feeling of belonging. This idea of masking goes very much into the discussion that we saw in the Evans video, which I'll refer to a bit. Also, part of the article from Mallet and Runswick-Cole, that this ability to pass, right? If I'm hiding my disability, and they say that the ability to pass refers to those people who are able to hide their impairment in order to be normal. And so I kind of really focused on that little bitty phrasing that it's appear normal, that our outward appearances are fine. But really, it's often a result that whatever's happening internally is due to an environmental mismatch. And then I'll lead into how I think that impacts self-efficacy. One of the bigger issues here is imagine that you're in a crowded restaurant, and this is going to tie to my own students' example. And as Evans mentioned, whether we choose to pass or uncover our disability, it is a personal decision. But in this instance, it's going to be a student sitting in a very crowded restaurant overseas. Lots of loud lights. We're super crowded in there. the loud noises, the lights, the dishes, the conversations, it became overwhelming. And I think that one of my students who is autistic and absolutely did well the rest of the trip, certainly bright and funny and had a great time, all of a sudden stood up and walked out. And as I went out to speak to them, it was evident that there was this immense like overload of everything that had just happened, all the sensory overload, all the noises, all the lights, the smells, everything, the crowding in was too much for them. And I felt bad because I didn't recognize that while they were sitting there, I didn't see those little small things that may have been happening that may have indicated that they were struggling, because normally they were just fine. And they may have sat there for a while being just fine, and nobody picked up that there was an issue, those small little behavioral changes. And I think it was frustrating for me that that student did leave in tears, right? They had to take their food to go. I think I was more upset that the tour company was not as understanding. And certainly the students disclosed that they had any issues or concerns before they went on the trip. And that type of environment was probably not best for the group of students that we were on. And again, that was just mismanaged or wasn't organized correctly by the tour company to not take that into account. Again, just because everyone seems fine doesn't mean that they are. Again, outward appearances was probably fine the majority of the trip, but yet in that environmental mismatch, they really struggled and they suffered and they lost out. And they're a college student and they're leaving in tears. And I think even being around their peers, that was probably very hard for them. And that really ties into a lot of our discussion that we had with Bandura and self-efficacy. Here we can look at this idea of, belief in one's ability to act, how those environments and responses from others can raise or lower our self-efficacy. And I think at that time for that student, I really am looking at this idea of inclusion. I think they felt excluded, right? Then they had to leave because they were overwhelmed and they went home. And that was, again, their choice. But I worry that they maybe didn't feel comfortable enough with the group of students that they were with, that, their experiences before might have been negative, right? With people trying to understand why they felt overwhelmed. I think that it speaks certainly to self-efficacy. Any encouragement or discouragement pertaining to an individual's performance or ability to perform. My hope is that we can encourage them to want to talk, to express that they were feeling overwhelmed, and not have to get to that point where it was so elevated. And if they do express it early on, that we are listening to them, that we hear them. And certainly, again, the environments and responses from others. I think my own response was important in this scenario. Again, I do feel bad that I didn't maybe recognize it soon enough. But this was kind of a big piece of the hidden disabilities discussion. We want, whether you have a visible or invisible or hidden disability, I think the goal is that we want people to have that self-efficacy, to advocate for themselves, to learn to cope, and to persist. But it becomes hard. It becomes easier to mask it and to leave than it is to kind of get everyone else around you to say, hey, we understand, we want to help you. And that cost of that misunderstanding is that exclusion of that person, right? And certainly I don't think that anyone, and I certainly didn't mean to, I don't think the group meant to exclude them, but it does happen. And certainly needs are never anticipated, right? And maybe they should be. And maybe the tour group should have anticipated some potential problems with that crowded of a restaurant, especially when we had students that did suffer from sensory overload. Pause that really quick here. Sorry. I made a couple short videos to kind of showcase what it feels like when there is sensory overload. So I'm just going to play like little brief clips and you can kind of understand. You may just walk by someone at a grocery store and nothing big, they're just shopping, but imagine hearing all these noises. And then the other one I'm going to play a brief clip is just sometimes my husband tells me this because he gets sensory overload. He just hears static. So I'm just going to play really short clips of those. And then here's just the static that my husband says he hears a lot of times when he's just overwhelmed with the noise. And they're not the most pleasant sounds, but I think that's what I was trying to get at, that you may be walking by somebody in a grocery store and for them, they just look like they're picking up a canned good, but in their head, it's either all that static or all that banging and clanging in the lights, and they're just overwhelmed. But for most of us, we would never know. So here, I think sensory overwhelm doesn't end when the noise stops. Certainly, they have to regulate, just as my student did. They had to step outside. They actually went back to the hotel room. And level of embarrassment, fear of judgment, and confusion from others. This is again where it's all about the environment and society, right? Placing these kind of barriers on them. I think what needs to happen is we need to build empathy and inclusion. We need to ask them about their needs. There should have been an offer for a quiet space. Certainly, we he left to go back to the hotel room. And let there be communication differences. And I think that we have to, as society, assume that a disability may be hidden. We need to just come up at the very beginning, start with that. So I wanted to pose two reflection questions based on my discussions. So one of them is, how might an environment you consider normal unexpectedly create barriers for someone else? And what small change could make it more accessible? And my other one, my little video here, if someone with a hidden disability experienced sensory overwhelm in front of you, what response from you would support their confidence and dignity rather than diminish it? And this is really stemming from the experience that I had. Thank you for watching, and here are my references.